Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage NAWB President and CEO Ron Painter, and from the Bertelsmann Foundation, Jeffrey Brown.
Good morning. Good morning. Wait, let's practice that again. Good morning. Welcome to Tuesday, and once again, welcome to Washington, D.C., which, as you may know, is your nation's capital. I'm here this morning with Jeff Brown, and it's a great pleasure for me to welcome Jeff to join me. Jeff is the manager of the Future of Work project and artificial intelligence at the Bertelsmann Foundation, based here in the U.S. So, Jeff, good morning.
Thank you very much, Ron.
You're going to hear from some of your peers this morning about a project that we've been working on with Bertelsmann, talking about the future of work. We were in Orlando, Vegas, and we actually got work done in Vegas, right? We did. And then we were in Riverside, California, talking about the future. So, Jeff, talk a little bit about Bertelsmann and how they got involved. Why the future of work? Why AI? I mean, we know that's a big thing, but why Bertelsmann?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you to Ron and to NAWB for the fantastic collaboration that we've had on the Future of Work project. We've learned a lot and are definitely ready for next steps. So the Bertelsmann Foundation is a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank that is headquartered here in Washington, D.C. And one of the reasons that we're focusing on the future of work is that there's been so much attention paid to the future of work at a national level. What can the United States do to craft future of work policy? What can Germany do? What can international organizations do, like the International Labor Organization, do to craft future of work policy? This project was about what cities can do, what counties can do, what regions can do to start thinking about the future of work in a creative way.
And the interesting, or one of the interesting parts, there were tons of interesting parts. Jeff and I got to do, Kelly Banks from our office did Orlando, but Jeff and I got to do Vegas and Riverside. But part of what was interesting is that Bertelsmann is doing some of this work in Europe as well, right?
So this is a transatlantic project. Each project that we do here in Washington has a transatlantic component. So it's about comparing the experiences of American cities, Riverside, Orlando, and Las Vegas, to the experiences of cities in Europe. We've completed one case study in Italy at this point. We'll probably do another in Brussels, Belgium, and then we're looking forward to a collaboration with a city in Germany later on in 2019. So.
And there's a little bit of, I don't want to call it sort of peer-to-peer pressure, but it was interesting because we kept asking you, we keep getting asked, well, what are they doing in Europe? How are they looking at this issue in Europe? And they're kind of asking about us, right?
Yeah, I think that there's curiosity in Europe to know how the United States is confronting the workforce implications of technology and automation. Here in the United States, we're familiar with the Swiss example of apprenticeships, with the German model of apprenticeships, and I know that that's something that came up in each city that we worked in. However, when you go to Europe, they're really curious. How is a city in the United States, how is a state in the United States grappling with new technologies, not just something like artificial intelligence, but the sharing economy? And they're eager to learn experiences from the United States. And I think that we've done that with this project using some of the videos that you'll see in just a few minutes.
So do you experience the same kind of angst in Europe that maybe we experience here? We have a lot of trepidation about what's coming, a lot of uncertainty about the turbulence we're in. Do you experience that in Europe as well?
Yes, but I think that it happens for different reasons. So as many of you know, in Europe, there's a strong welfare state in many different countries, which will kind of soften the blow from technology and automation. And that's not necessarily something that we've developed to the extent that they have in Europe, here in the United States.
So do they worry about it? I mean, from the standpoint here, you're right. Some of the conversations we have here in the US is that in terms of the American myth about the mobility of the labor force, we know data today that tells us we're the least mobile since we began measuring commutes or moves in and out of regions. We know there's no assistance for workers in the U.S. to do that. Is it the worry in Europe that there's going to be a fray to the safety net, that somehow that's not going to be there?
So in Europe, they're dealing with that same sort of issue, labor mobility. How do you get someone who has grown up in Italy and might not speak any other Italian languages other than Italian to move to a place like Germany or the UK? And so I think that Europe needs to develop its own unique models to deal with the future of work, and certainly promoting labor mobility is one of those. But it's going to be up to the Europeans to develop solutions that are place-based in Europe, and it's going to be up to cities in the United States to develop place-based future of work strategies for their cities here.
I know I want to ask you your impression. I want to say thanks to Pam, to Jaime, to Jamil and the crew in Riverside and Vegas and Orlando. It was a very different experience. Those are places that I've been, places that you've been. You grew up in Riverside. But to experience 2 days of being immersed in the conversations with the workforce board, with civic leaders, with political leaders was really I experienced the cities differently. What was your experience when you came away from the 3 trips?
So going into each one of these cities, and as you mentioned, I am from Riverside, California, so it was a pleasure to do the project there.
You can applaud Riverside.
But I experienced the dynamic to be very similar in each one of the places that we worked, whether it was Orlando, Las Vegas, or Riverside. And I came away from the project, the one big lesson that I came away with was the future of work is playing out in each one of these cities in a very, very different way. The actors are different in each city that are driving the conversation around the future of work. They all have different strengths and different weaknesses when it comes to the future of work. And most of all, it's going to be up to people in these communities to craft future of work policy that is based on all of these elements at the local level. So.
Awesome. And it was, again, truly thanks to those 3 cities to open their doors and open some honest conversation. We heard some things I don't think you would normally hear when you visit them. So you now are going to get to hear from those 3 cities, and hopefully you can take some of their experiences back with you as you begin the conversation or as you continue your conversation about where are we headed wherever you're from. Jeff, thanks.
Thank you, Ron.
At the Tipsy Robot in Las Vegas, the future has arrived, and robots have already replaced your friendly neighborhood bartender. Just 8 servers and 1 technician oversee 2 robotic arms that whip up drinks for passers-by from around the world. Here, servers focus less on manufacturing drinks and more on upselling and coaching customers to mix and match ingredients using touchscreens.
I can see that it will probably take away from the bartending aspect of people and that social interaction with actual bartenders. But it's cool though, I think it's pretty cool.
But while the technology is undeniably selfie-worthy, are robot bartenders the proverbial canaries in the coal mine for service sector workers in hospitality, retail, and logistics everywhere? Will they bring doom and gloom, or are they the new pioneers that will allow humanity to live with abundance? And you might be wondering, will the robots taking over Las Vegas stay in Las Vegas? From its start, Las Vegas has been characterized by its pioneering spirit and entrepreneurial mindset that has welcomed new technologies and ideas. But beyond the glitz and glitter of the Strip, what impact will new technologies have on the jobs, tasks, and incomes of the region's more than 2 million inhabitants? Rob Mallory is a Las Vegas native and Vice President of People and Culture at the AI Foundation, a company developing digital twin technology using artificial intelligence.
Las Vegas is primarily old legacy technology mixed with, cutting edge entertainment. we're the best in the world at entertainment, but technology, actually, you'd be surprised how antiquated most of the stuff outside of the video surveillance systems Vegas is. And so what Vegas really, I think, needs to be is a driver toward bringing additional brains into Las Vegas and kind of diversifying into the future state of things, whether that's through advanced software development, companies moving here and doing not just distribution or not just factory building, but also building software that's going to drive those factories and drive the rest of the world and drive the future of work.
Headquartered in the shadow of the iconic Stratosphere Casino, Culinary Workers Union Local 226 recently succeeded in their drive to include clauses covering technology and automation in the contracts of more than 57,000 workers.
We make the commitment to figure out how we're going to protect people's jobs. That's one of the things, is very important part of the negotiation. So we don't want saying the technology is not going to come. That's not going to happen. They have the right to put it. But how it's going to affect our people, how it's going to affect the members, how we're going to be sure they protect their jobs, and what kind of choices they're going to have. That was our goal in our entire negotiation.
Right. Good morning, everyone. That's just a little taste of some of the work that has been done as a part of this project. And now I'm very excited as the chair of NAWB to actually get to talk to some of the folks that are impacted by the work of the Future of Work project, as well as some of the folks that helped bring it to life. We want to talk a little bit about the experience, but also what are some of the outcomes that we've now realized as you get the opportunity to kind of look under the hood of what you're doing, look under the different aspects that the future of work is going to play on our future workforce. And so very excited for this first project that really talks about Las Vegas, but we really think of Las Vegas as a broader community, all of Southern Nevada, and we've got folks from from the Southern Nevada Workforce, right? Workforce Connection, I apologize. Jaime Cruz, Executive Director. Then we have,
we have fans. We have fans.
Yeah. Councilwoman in Chair, Jerry Schroeder. Commissioner Varlin Higbee, who has the best looking hat in the building today. And we've got another panelist who's got a great hat, and it was hard to beat. And Councilman Scott Black. So thank you all for joining us. And we want to start by just talking a little bit about what makes Las Vegas such a unique place to talk about the future of work, to talk about the concept of the person and the process and the machine and how all that comes together to create this new ecosystem and new dynamic. And so, Jerry, kind of curious, in some of our conversations before coming out here today, you'd mentioned, some new employers coming into your area. So can you just address kind of how that's impacting them and what that's like from an economic development perspective?
Sure. Well, we realized about 10 years ago when the recession hit that, in the Las Vegas area, and of course, I actually serve on the city council for the city of Henderson, which is south of Las Vegas. And Councilman Black he serves on the city council in North Las Vegas. And Commissioner Varlin Higbee is a commissioner for Lincoln County, which is kind of southeast or southwest, northwest. More in the rural areas. And so our particular areas are not in the core part of Las Vegas. But what we realized with the recession is that we needed to diversify our workforce, because for many years, the Las Vegas area has counted on the hospitality industry. in the entertainment industry. And we realize that we need to do more than that. So in the city of Henderson, we have a company called Haas Automation that will be coming to Henderson. They've already been approved to come there. They're buying property. And Haas Automation manufactures machine tools. And so what they're looking at is not just a huge manufacturing company that will bring 2,500 jobs, but also they're looking at robotics to send some tools from one end to the other end of their manufacturing plant. But there's still going to need to be people to build these machine tools. There's still going to need to be people to be able to, for the information technology, in order to make sure that these robots go from one place to the other place and that they're doing everything the way that they need to be doing. So in other words, they're not going to place one machine tool over here and another machine tool over there, and they're not supposed to be in those places. So while we're looking for diversifying, and information technology is coming, and people may be displaced in other jobs. We had seen in the video about the bartender possibly being more robotic. There's still somebody that needs to build those machines and somebody that needs to make sure that those machines work correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. And Scott, you've had some similar experiences in the north area of Las Vegas. Tell us just a little bit about kind of the experience that you're having as well.
Absolutely. First, I need to set the record straight. The robot invasion in southern Nevada started with the Transformer impersonators that hang out in front of the Bellagio Hotel. They'll take a nice photo with you for a small donation. That's really the impetus of our robot invasion. But they're very kind people, and they congregate on the Strip. But the real valuable robotic aspects of our community and artificial intelligence in North Las Vegas, where I live, and the council that I represent, traditionally North Las Vegas has been considered somewhat of a bedroom community of the Las Vegas area. But over the past half a dozen years, under the leadership of our current mayor, we've really been transforming into what Mayor Lee calls the kind of the e-commerce logistics and distribution hub of the West Coast. And we've brought on about 10 million square feet of commercial space, largely logistics, distribution, and light manufacturing. Some notable names are Amazon, Sephora. They're coming in and building these, but the warehousing and the distribution that they're building is not the distribution of old, if you will. It's not the dusty warehouse with the smelly forklift. For instance, the Amazon property, it's their third facility in North Las Vegas. It's 2.4 million square feet, 3 levels, 800,000 square feet on each level, and the second and third level are highly robotic. It's very clean. It's amazing just to see the inner workings. But what we have in our community is the need for a new and modern logistics employee. That's someone who has the technical skills and training to really work in this new logistics and distribution environment, which is significantly different than what it used to be. So we're thankful in North Las Vegas for Workforce Connections and for their commitment to stay ahead of the curve. So as these companies come in, they can fulfill, like for instance, the Amazon facility, even with the robotics, they're going to fill this 2.4 million square feet with about 1,500 employees. So.
Yeah, and you know, we've had a lot of conversation this week, especially if you've attended any of the industry roundtables yesterday, where we talk about things like advanced robotics, and we talk about the need for a shift in skills. But at the same time, right, we're still having to deal with the fact that there's real impact on real employees. And sometimes if you're at a lower skill and you can't get upskilled fast enough, that may mean some kind of a trade-off. And so, Varlin, kind of curious, what are the conversations you're having about the impact of, the trade-off between people and having to upskill and having to get them to where they need to be a part of this new future economy?
Well, Vegas has built its persona, or it's built itself around the hospitality industry, where they sell a racy nightlife, and they sell they want you to, you come to Vegas, the glitz and the glitter, and we'll show you a good time, and you have fun, and feed you for nothing, and put you up in a room for nothing, and fleece you on the tables. And you go away happy. You've had a great time. I don't know that robotics will ever replace that racy bartender with the low-cut top and the short shorts, but that part of it is why people come to Vegas. But somewhere in that mix, we got to figure out a way to take those individuals that have been displaced from their jobs, and that's where workforce comes in, where we can retrain them, get them into a job that fits, either into the electronics to repair the things, or something that fits. It's all about people. Workforce Connections is all about people and serving people, and not just people, but our youth. If we can catch our youth at a low level that are in trouble youth, and catch them there and not wait till they get put in prison or jail, and then they become a real cost to the taxpayers.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of my vision of what I'd like to see it going.
Well, and I think, we can all agree that, where robotics helps augment the ability of the person to do their job, makes things more efficient and faster. If you were up at McClellan's bar last night, you probably would have appreciated a robotic bartender that was a little bit quicker, right?
But again, somebody has to build those machines. Someone has to make sure that those machines are working correctly.
Right. So Jaime, we've got just time for one quick additional question here. What's the experience been for you, and what did you learn that you're going to take into the future for your board?
So I think the most important lesson for us as a workforce board, this opportunity allows us to convene not just the regular one-stop delivery system partners, if you will, adult education and Wagner Pizer and all the folks that work in the one-stops, but we actually, this opportunity brought in the education system, both K through 12 and higher ed, the economic development system. So we all convened around these 2 days that the NAWB and the Bertelsmann Foundation was visiting. And since then, we have, if you will, owned now, the local board will be the convener moving forward to keep this conversation going about how we adjust to the future of work.
Okay, fabulous. Well, big round of applause for our friends from Southern Nevada Workforce Connection.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Since its founding, Riverside has personified the Golden State ideal of sunshine paired with opportunity. Nearly 250,000 citrus trees ushered in California's lesser-known gold rush, catapulting the area into the nation's wealthiest per capita. But since the 1950s, oranges have given way to tract housing, strip malls, and warehouses. The heart of the nation's 13th largest metro area, Riverside struggles to attract mid- and high-skilled jobs. With its transformation from orange to inland empire complete, how is the area preparing its economy and workers for the next generation empire that will be built using technology and automation? Riverside confronts dueling visions for its future. Its strategic location has made it the logistics hub of Southern California, which provides jobs and tax revenue. But the area also seeks to leverage its educational institutions and quality of life to give coastal California a run for its money when it comes to attracting next-generation jobs that will drive the future of work.
Our population here is low skill, and there's a lot of them that need work now. And we have a lot of land and a lot of business-friendly government, so logistics has become a big thing for us. We've become the logistics capital.
You couldn't be better located. And I was one of the largest ports in the United States. Half of all goods coming into America flow through here. So to have all those things here and not capitalize on this huge historic opportunity to be on the right side of the world, it would be a miss. We have Silicon Valley, we have biotech valleys. This could be advanced manufacturing.
Logistics companies are going to continue to come here, even as we upskill our workforce. There will still be many, many, many new jobs, the high-skilled, robotic types of jobs, many more of those, because logistics companies are going to continue to grow. Amazon probably won't need 9,000 employees 10 years from now. They probably will only have 3,000 employees, but they're going to be the higher skilled 3,000 employees. But those 3,000 employees out of the 9,000, they will train to make them high skilled, and we've been told that by all these large companies, that as they grow, they will grow their employees.
But those promises need to be kept for Riverside and its workers to benefit from technology and automation.
Think about the future of entry-level jobs, because many of the entry-level jobs that exist right now are repetitive, have a high probability of automation, so we need to rethink the way we bring people from high school, from college, from even their advanced degrees into the workforce.
All right, so very pleased now to have Jamil Dada, the chair of the Riverside County Workforce Development Board and star of the Riverside Future of Work episode. So that's all right.
Oh. I know many of you know me, and those of you that know me well know that I always go off script. So I want
in
Ron
the first
Painter,
5 seconds,
Ron,
no less.
For the first 10 seconds. Come here, Ron. So when I was the NAWB chair 10 years ago is when Ron joined us. So this is his 10th year anniversary. Let's give him a round.
I love you.
I'm going to embarrass him more. I know we're all leaving today. His birthday is tomorrow. So we're going to sing him really quickly, okay? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ron. Happy birthday to you. Okay. Thanks. So, nobody had an idea I was going to do that. Sorry, I'm taking up your time. All right, let's move on. What are we doing?
And if you're wondering what the perfect gift for Ron is, he is happy to accept Starbucks gift cards in any denomination. So no, it's great to have you here, Jamil. And you know, in all honesty, Jamil and I have really built quite a friendship and a bond over probably the last 6 or so years. As members of the board, and I've had the opportunity to come out and experience some of Riverside County and what's happening in your area as a result of that, and so really excited to talk about that with you. You know, as we start though, I'm just curious. You know, we have this great opportunity to, again, as I mentioned earlier, you know, we're lifting up the hood and we're taking a look at the engine that's driving your workforce development system. But what was the experience like for you as a board member to go through this process of having others look at you in this way and ask you the kind of deep probing questions we sometimes don't often have people ask us?
You know, Riverside County, you heard maybe a little bit of it, is out of the 3,109 counties in the United States is the 10th largest. Big challenge. We're one of the fastest growing regions in the country, 2.5 million people. And while that gives us great opportunity, it's also can be a big challenge. Very fast growing. How are we going to manage that? And so in our own minds in Riverside County Workforce Board members, and I have 11 of them here with me today, we're like legends in our own mind.
Yeah,
so we needed an outside look. So particularly when Germany was mentioned, because we all talk about global competitiveness, but in my mind, it's not competitiveness, it should be global collaboration. So working with Switzerland, working with Germany. So from that perspective, we were very happy to have them come and look at us and say, okay, this is what other countries are doing, this is what's going on. So we were happy to have that look. Now, you mentioned the Workforce Board. We do have a very, very engaged Workforce Board. I don't want to take up a lot of time, and I know there's a lot of board members here and a lot of board chairs here, but I work with a lot of board chairs. In California, of the 46 workforce boards, I work with a lot of the chairs. I know some chairs that they think all their job is to just run the board meeting, and it shouldn't be that. Chairs and board members should be very engaged. They should be engaged with their municipal leaders, with their commissioners and supervisors, with their state legislators, with They're congressional representatives. They should be involved in the chambers of commerce. They should be involved with employers. That's what our board does. So we're very, very engaged in our region, and that helps a lot.
Yeah, I love the concept of every board member having an expectation of advocacy, right?
Absolutely.
Every single one of us should be singing the praises of the system every single day. And this is a unique way to kind of talk about the system, you know, the way that we're doing this. But in your early remark there, you said, you know, you gave some of the stats. 2.5 million people, one of the most populous counties in the country. Yet when you think of Southern California, you don't think about Riverside. You don't think about San Bernardino. The Inland Empire isn't what comes to mind, right? It's coastal California. It's surfer dudes, not dudes working at the Skechers warehouse.
We're the stepchildren, yes.
Right, yeah. So I think there are a lot of folks that can relate to that, though. You know, if you're outside of a major metropolitan area in your own state, you may be struggling with some of that same, hey, look at me, help me. And you've done a lot at the state level. You've done a lot at the national level, of course, as well. Give us just a little bit of a hint how, as a board member or as a board, you can get a little bit more of that attention. What do you do in Riverside?
So I also sit on our governor's workforce board in Sacramento, and this is my third governor. So we are constantly in Sacramento, and as you know, in Washington, you know, beating the drum, passing the hat. That's why I have the hat. But we do compete with Orange County in California, with the LA, and with the Bay Area. And because of their big populations, they have many more legislators than we do. But we're growing faster than they are, so the industries are moving towards us. But we're still very much focused on logistics, and we're trying to rebrand. University of California, our campus at Riverside, in the last 2 years has bumped up 89 slots on the list of one of the top research and innovation universities. And of the 11 members that I have here with me, 5 of them represent our educational institutions. So Riverside County has 3 universities and 6 community colleges. So education plays a big role, and we understand that we have to upscale our labor, and colleges work very, very closely with us. That's been a big thing for us. And just recently, Sacramento and LA announced that the California Air Resources Board, which is a huge facility, a state facility, is moving to Riverside after 6 decades in LA. And that is going to bring a whole new industry to Riverside County, environmental green technology. So we're diversifying.
And I think, you know, one thing, and you'll hear some of this during our Orlando piece as well, but that's a big part of this. It's diversifying the employee base, the business base is such a key driver to what we do. The future of work, you know, if we think about the future of work 100 years ago, and we were 100 miles, you know, to the west in West Virginia at a coal mine, right? It was a company town. The company owned everything. They owned the mine, they owned the store, they owned the hotel, and you spent 40 years doing the same job, mining coal every single day. That is not the reality of what happens anymore, right? Even if you go to McDonald's, you don't order at the front counter anymore, you order at a kiosk.
At the kiosk.
So the job has changed.
Right.
And I think that is the message that we have to continue to help our legislators understand and make sure our boards are saying that message too. So
that's exactly what we're doing. And to close, the third oldest Air Force base, March Air Force Base, is also in Riverside County. It's a 101-year-old Air Force base. So we're also trying to focus on a little bit more aerospace. And of our 27 cities, one of our cities is Paris, California, P-E-R-R-I-S. Our Economic Development Director from the city of Paris is here with us today. And Paris just got a $5 million grant from US EDA to expand job training facilities and create more partnerships. So we're going to keep rolling and we're going to keep moving, and we'll come back in a year or two and tell you we're doing even better.
That's great. All right. Thank you so much, Jamil.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for supporting NAWB. Thank you.
Here, Jamil.
You've probably heard of Orlando by way of the Magic Kingdom. But only a small fraction of visitors make it past Mickey and Minnie to Orlando itself. The region, already home to 2 million people, is growing fast. But growth is putting pressure on schools, highways, the environment, and workers. Identified as one of the most vulnerable in the United States to technology and automation, Orlando's businesses, policymakers, and educators are planning for the future of work.
Orlando is a really exciting and vibrant place. 1,000 people move into the state of Florida every day. Well, 1,000 people move into Central Florida every week. When I started here, the school district, Orange County School District, 10th largest in the country, had about 190,000 students. In just 5 years, that's now almost 215,000 students in one county.
This community is made up of people from all over. We didn't grow because we birthed people here. We grew because people moved here.
But when new arrivals reach Orlando, what types of jobs can they get?
It's possible for someone to relocate to Orlando and find a job. It may not be full-time, and it may not pay above minimum wage, but the job is likely there.
One perspective is that when you are a low-cost and low-tax position, then that puts you as an attractor to a certain demographic, certain types of families and certain types of folks will come to that area. And we're trying to continue the work of dispelling that Orlando is the low-cost, the cheap place to come live. That's old Florida, but that's decades of perception.
So, what should the new Florida look like?
Our tagline is Orlando, you don't know the half of it. And that's because less than half of our economy is actually made up of the tourism industry.
Forbes just put out several months back that we were like number 1 or number 2 in manufacturing growth in the United States, Central Florida. It really surprised me. How do we keep up with that growth?
Economic growth comes at what cost? And there is growing consensus and agreement that it is quality of life, it is well-being. We've got enormous pressures on the way we're trying to live. And the human brain can only take so much. And there's only so much pressure before we start to try to escape it. Drug abuse, opioid deaths, alcohol abuse, diabetes, not eating right. This productivity, if that is a mindset that a community might want to have, and only champion productivity, then by definition you are cascading or the rest of the quality life conversation because you are contributing to nothing more than pressure on your workforce.
Does that make sense?
The need for balance, and more than a cliche that I have balance in my life, is really to understand that if you don't, the system goes out of whack. Caring about each other, figuring out that we are linked, we are in a system, and it has to be based on trust, and it has to be based on mutual reciprocity. In economic terms, we call that social capital. And without social capital, there is no economic development.
Testing. All right.
Well,
after that, that was interesting. Yeah, everyone's awake still in the room. Well, welcome back. I'm very happy to have Pam Nabors from CareerSource Central Florida to talk about the last city on our tour of tourism spots in America.
The best city for tourism spots in America.
There you go. It's notable that they didn't shoot any of these in northern Wisconsin or North Dakota in winter. No, so Pam, very excited though to talk about Orlando and some of the work that you've done and really some of the work that's come about as a result of this particular project as well. And I want to start, you made mention in your comments here about Orlando, you don't know the half of it,
right.
And the tagline that you've adopted. And I think when most people think about Orlando, they do think about some of these concepts of it's a tourism town.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually have great personal experience with you and your staff. A few years ago, I led talent attraction for Charles Schwab, and we've got a large facility in Maitland and worked with your team quite a bit. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing in Orlando to take these folks that are working 1, 2, 3 jobs in tourism and hospitality, maybe at minimum wage, maybe for tips, and helping to bring them in the system so that they can get into some of these career type roles.
So, you know, Orlando, you don't know the half of it, is really true also for people that live in Orlando. As a region, we have around 2.3 million people, but we also have 70 million people that visit there every year. And those numbers to me are just staggering. So the people that live there know a lot about the attractions, but not necessarily about the rest of the economy. And so as you heard in the video, we have a very vibrant and growing advanced manufacturing economy. We are the world's capital for simulation. We have 10,000 jobs around the second largest university in the country, University of Central Florida. Go Knights.
So close to beating Duke the other night.
So close. We're very proud of our team and our university. We have 10,000 jobs around the university that are providing simulation training to all phases of the military. We have growing and amazing construction industry, also supporting hospitality, but transportation across the region. And so the regional residents themselves, the people who come there, mentioned in the video, who might come for hospitality jobs, don't know about the opportunities that exist in the region. Healthcare, another amazingly growing industry. And so part of what we do in partnership with our economic development partners, our education partners, both our state colleges and our universities and our technical colleges, is really get the word out about other job opportunities. One thing you can say about the base of skill we have is amazing customer service and hospitality. And so if I go to any industry, I will find that that is a baseline skill used. And so often we can take that skill, talk to people about other opportunities. Say if you started in housekeeping, you might think about how do you actually parlay those skills into a healthcare occupation and move into one of our world-class hospitals, Florida Hospital, Orlando Health. And there are amazing jobs growing in those industries. So,
and I think you're saying exactly what we need to hear, right? It really is about a skills-based economy.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And we're all here because we believe that, right? I mean, is that something we all believe? And is that the message though that we're sharing with the businesses that we support, and is that the message that we're sharing with our legislators as well? But, you know, I think as a part of this project, we also want to find out, is it kicking off any new conversations? Are you talking about anything differently than you did before, you know, Bertelsmann came in and helped, you know, kind of, look deeply at what you're doing?
Well, so we've all been talking together and looking at prosperity opportunities for the people in our region. And so I think among us, though, you know, this project, like others that have initiated in the region, we're really talking about how do we craft relationships rather than transactions with our business community and with our career seekers. You know, careers are not linear anymore. We need to be able to be a resource to those career seekers or those businesses along the journey of their career or their business rollout. You know, they may come to us at one point, but then they may need us at another. And so much of what workforce and our education partners and our economic development partners is provide an important service at one point along that continuum. I think we've recognized that we have to be resources and also technology-driven, mobile-driven resources beyond just one point. So it's really crafting relationships. I think the other piece is that we understand there are many factors around those job seekers and those skill individuals that we need to also support. Childcare, early learning. For example, we have a very young workforce in Orlando. And so how do we provide support to individuals who are working 2 or 3 jobs to take on a skills training? How do we support their childcare needs, their transportation needs? And so those conversations are happening.
Absolutely. And, you know, I can't imagine a place where, you know, things like 2Gen and et cetera are more important, again, because you have this tremendous dichotomy of folks that are moving in, working multiple, you know, entry-level jobs and really trying to build a career. And your team's doing a great job at it.
Thank you. We enjoy each other as a region. I think one of the things, you know, about our region is that we're very collaborative. You can see that we're looking at the things that we have as challenges and the things that we have as opportunities, and constantly focusing on how do we create this broad-based prosperity across the region in Central Florida.
I think it's a great point to end on.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Pam. Really appreciate you and your team. And yeah, great hands.
For 3 courageous people. It's not, you know, when we started this project, some trepidation on our part, and Jeff and Bertelsmann and we had a lot of conversations back and forth. I want you to know that as modest as they are, we really ask a lot of Pam, of Jaime, and Jamil. When you think about having somebody come in for 2 days, and the number of people that you have to ask to come in, and the questions that we were allowed to ask, and we really were told in all 3 cities, assured there were no questions that weren't askable. And so, as I mentioned in the opening, it was a really different experience. How many of you have been to Orlando and Vegas or Riverside? Yeah, right. So we see that part of it. You know, we helicopter in, we fly in, and we head to the airport. I know Jaime would want me to say, and I hope we hope you leave a lot of money in Vegas. But to spend, you know, time like really hanging out with ordinary people and to talk about their hometown, their city, was really a pretty unique experience. So I do want to thank them, and I do want to remind you that with NC3 and our board member Chancellor Lambert, we're going to be heading out across the U.S. in a listening tour. So if you want to be a part of that, please andersonm@nawb.org. Give Mel a shout, and we'll try to get you on the schedule. It's a great opportunity for us, and as Jaime mentioned, it's a good opportunity for the boards to gather people and maybe have a different kind of conversation. I'm really happy about the next panel that I'm gonna bring out, and I want to introduce them, and please give them a very warm welcome. It's been my pleasure to interact with them and to get to know them, and I think we got a pretty hard-working crew coming out. Let me introduce. Make sure I know the order. Let me introduce Clarence Carter, is the Director of the Office Family Assistance and the Acting Director of the Office of Community Services at HHS Administration for Children and Families.
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, Clarence.
Morning.
Johnny Collett is the Assistant Secretary for Special Education and Rehabilitation Services at the U.S. Department of Education. Welcome, Johnny.
Are we going down? Okay.
Obviously, one of our favorites here, Molly Conway, the Assistant Secretary for the Employment and Training Administration. Molly, thanks. And last but not least, and a shout out because at our last Board of Directors meeting, we got to spend about an hour with Scott, grilling him on different things. Scott Stump from the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education at the Department of Education.
No.
Okay, very good. Good morning.
Good morning. Morning.
So the first thing I'm going to say is, and it won't come as any surprise to them, some of them know that I'm a Pittsburgh boy. Now, this was not, we did not set it up this way, but I am very proud to say that my fellow Pittsburgher, Clarence Clarence Carter is joining us this morning.
Absolutely. That's it.
We didn't live all that far, right?
Absolutely.
You lived on the hill, and I lived up over the hill over on the east side. So, great to have a fellow Pittsburgher.
Absolutely.
We're just going to walk down the order because you haven't been there forever. So I want to ask, when the call came, when you were asked to assume your positions, what were you really excited about? What was that thing that you said, oh my gosh, this is a great opportunity for me to do? Scott?
Can I have more than one?
Oh, absolutely you can, and I know you do, but yeah.
Well, number one, I would say that the first thing I was excited about, although it was a little trepidation, I do have a daughter that, two sons that are out of the house, graduated, have jobs of their own, actively working, paying their own home and car payments. But one still in the house that's a 17-year-old at the time, and yeah, she was the one that said, gave me the permission to go. Now, she did have a list of things that I do need to make it home for, but she said yes. But more importantly, the reason that I even considered it and asked her that question, and I've been in this business of career and technical education since I started teaching in 1990, so almost 30 years. And I have lived through presidents and administrations that have zeroed out Perkins time and time again. I have been through the College for All agenda, where it is all about four-year degrees. And what I find in this administration, what I'm excited about, is a president and a secretary of education that firmly believe that education is about workforce and economic development. And they're wanting to repair that gap that's between education and the economy. And as a part of that, it gets me excited. And I didn't know, I was hoping that the Perkins Act would be reauthorized, but to sit in this seat after having administered a state's Perkins plan for multiple years, to then be a part of the two-year adventure of going from an act being reauthorized to having state plans come in that I'm hoping are bold, that I'm hoping are innovative, that I'm hoping set us up for the next decade of how we train individuals in this country.
And I guess sort of the inside baseball is that's a pretty grueling process to get a major piece of legislation, even as kind of bipartisan as workforce and education. That's a lot of grind to get this stuff.
We've been waiting 12 years, and it was time. And it's created a lot of energy. States are excited. And I, first and foremost, before I say anything else, do want all of you as workforce board members to be active stakeholders in that process.
Cool. And Molly, talk about the limelight. This is an administration that talks about work, that talks about skills, that talks about like we gotta get it together. What excited you about the opportunity to be a part of the Employment and Training Administration?
Absolutely. So you're right. It's jobs, jobs, and more jobs. But I think what personally excited me the most is after about 10 years on the Hill, helping write legislation and bills that, you're sitting in a little bit of a vacuum. You think this is great, this is going to work really well. You come over to the administration and see how it's implemented. Maybe, we need more flexibility, just having the well-rounded look at the differences between, they are very, very different. And so that has been very eye-opening, working with your constituents, your groups, trying to encourage more flexibility. We're issuing as many WIOA waivers as possible. But echoing what Scott said, the secretaries and the president really are all about breaking down the barriers between education and training or workforce development. Virginia Fox would kill me for saying the word training. But
we won't tell her.
Oh, how we know that. Oh, how we have experienced the gentle lady from North Carolina commenting to us about training versus skill and education.
Breaking down the barriers between education and skills instruction. It's been wonderful, and working with education and just making all of that happen from the position that we're in, where it really is the #1 priority of this administration. Apprenticeships, everything. That's just been really great.
And before I ask Johnny and Clarence, I got to ask you. So, were there surprises when you came from the authorizing side of the world on the Hill to the administration side? Were there a few surprises in all of that?
Yeah, the biggest one is the Administrative Procedure Act, and understanding that you can't undo something with the snap of your fingers. You can't redo something with the snap of your fingers. You have to look at the regulatory impact analysis. You have to look at all of the comments. It really is not just whatever you want to make of it. And so on the Hill, we thought that was the case. And
I see you don't have to answer, but did you ever sit there and go, who passed this stuff? No, I didn't. I said, you don't have to answer.
I'm not answering.
Johnny, what grabbed you about the opportunity? What were you really excited about?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to respond to that. I was a teacher in the high school setting, so taught special education, and certified in the state I came from for learning and behavior disorders, K through 12. So but my entire teaching career was in the high school. So it was great for me for lots of reasons, not the least of which is we got to talk about transition a lot. We got to talk a lot about students transitioning from K-12 to post-secondary education and employment. So it was really exciting for me to be able, even back then, to work with local voc rehab counselors, even at the district level, at the school level. So then I worked at the State Department of Education and had more opportunities. I had the opportunity to be the State Special Education Director in Kentucky. And during that, we'll talk about this a little bit more, hopefully, a bit later, but having the opportunity to work across child-serving agencies in the state was significant. And not the least of which of those in terms of significance was working with our Department for Voc Rehab. So even before I got here, had some experience, practical experience on the ground in a school with kids and families, working with VR and thinking about transition to life after high school. Same thing at the state level. Got to do that at a nonprofit I worked for here in DC as well. But then here at the department, one of the things that strikes me, and my good friend Scott Stump also believes he leads a very unique office, and he does. But I always say that OSERS, the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services, and is it okay if I just say OSERS? Yeah. Because I promise it'll save you and me a lot of time today. Right? So one of the things that I think is incredibly unique about OSERS is we really do have the opportunity and frankly the charge to really impact positively across the life of an individual with disability. So when we think about sort of one side of our house implementing the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and we think about kids birth through 21, and then the other side of our house, we think about the great work we're doing with partners like these in implementing, supporting states to implement WIOA, and specifically our carve out in terms of voc rehab. So really across the life of an individual with disability from birth through adulthood is an incredible opportunity for us here in OSERS, and it's something I was really excited about, had a little bit of experience in, but have enjoyed this last year.
I guess maybe it is special. I mean, I feel that way because having been in the field, I feel like it's a special opportunity for me. It's special to be a part of leading a profession I deeply believe in, and you came out of the classroom, you and Scott both. So it has to be a pretty special feeling to be able to be in a position of leadership in your field.
It is. It's an incredible sort of opportunity, but it's also, it's a trust. We think of it as a trust that we hold. Folks have given us this opportunity to be here, and we have a window of time to lead, and we want to lead well, and we want to support folks locally who know best about the individuals that you serve and the innovations that will work in your context, and we hold that in trust, and really it is a great opportunity. It truly is.
Clarence, you got a lot going on in your part of the world. What excited you about the opportunity to come to DC and to work in this position?
Well, Ron, before I dive into that, I want to thank NAWB for putting this panel together. It's representative of all of the pieces have to be connected in order for us to achieve the objective of being able to grow the capacity of the people that we serve. The design of government is one which is very vertical, okay? We all exist in our own silos, but none of our silos are the silver bullet to solving the complex problems of our society. And so, we have been working collectively to figure out how we connect our dots to be able to better serve those that we serve. And so, thanks so much for the opportunity for us to come together in this forum.
Well, I have to give a special shout out to Kim Vitale, who works for Molly. She did an incredible job and a yeoman's job of putting together, not only helping us with the panel, but also the TA, the workshops that are going to happen right after us. So Molly, shout out to
Kim is wonderful.
To your
Absolutely.
staff. Great cooperation. We appreciate them.
So what excited me about this opportunity was the chance to rethink the way that our system of public supports or our public safety net works. Okay? We currently have an aggregation of more than 80 single-purpose programs that were all designed to address some singular aspect of the human condition. Okay? Those things are not in any way connected, and so it ends up being a challenge to take a comprehensive approach to addressing the challenging issues that a vulnerable individual or family may face. And so to be able to rethink that, and then to be able to put on top of that safety net an overarching objective. And what I mean by that is that we have all of these programs and a system of public supports, but they don't have an overarching objective to help grow that vulnerable individual or family beyond that vulnerability. The emphasis is on serving people as long as they meet the criterion to be served. What we argue is that it should be our objective to be able to grow as many vulnerable individuals and families beyond their vulnerability, so that the safety net or the system of public supports should be a mile marker in a life's journey, not a destination unto itself.
So it's not the process. It's let's not honor the process. Let's honor the conclusion.
Let's honor the outcome. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's also kind of sweet, isn't it, to claim just a little space for Steeler Nation here in Washington, D.C.
Absolutely.
Bless your heart.
Yeah. As Mitzi Wood would say, bless his heart. So I want to come back. So now you got here, the excitement, you figured out where everything was. Now suddenly everybody starts to walk in and say, oh, by the way, there is this, and oh, there's this. So I just want to ask you, I'll start back with Clarence. So what are the three big issues that you see, the challenges facing your work?
So I may sound like a sort of or seem like a one-trick pony here, but I begin with this notion of trying to significantly rethink what is an absolute behemoth in our system of public supports. Those more than 80 programs, we spend on an annual basis about $1.1 trillion a year in service to the socially, economically, and developmentally vulnerable in our society. It is our argument that it is not that we don't spend enough, it is that our structure and our processes are not what they should be. And so, one, it is rethinking that. Okay? Now, before you even have an opportunity to begin to sort of rethink, you have to have some understanding of, I'll say, where the restrooms are. Okay, the sort of the basics of how federal service operates. Now, I had the good fortune of, this is my second stint in federal service, and the most valuable lesson I learned the last time and was able to instantly employ here is that we have an incredible federal service, the career service that keeps government grinding no matter what the administration. And so what I was able to do is to lean on that team of career servants to help me understand the bureaucracy and ensure that the day-to-day is honored, so that we can think on this sort of more macro level of trying to change the way the system operates.
So it's really coming in and saying, look, this is about this is about the end. Let's figure out where we're going here. And you do have a massive, HHS is a massive organization, but it touches us all in so many different ways. So appreciate that. Johnny, what are the two or three things that you said, geez, these are the big things we got to work at?
Yeah, well, I tell you, it's sort of similar to what Clarence said, and I want to say more about this hopefully toward the end. I think we may have a question that gets us there, but as you asked that question to Clarence, I was thinking back to an actual experience of mine. So we have y'all know what an IEP is, not an IPE, but you know what that is too. But an individualized education program for kids with disabilities. So one of my first IEP team meetings as a teacher was one of my students' last IEP team meetings. So we came in well-meaning, but we came in and had this massive binder of information, all sorts of contact information for other organizations and groups and people who may be able to support this individual as he transitioned from high school to life after high school. So it was massive and it was overwhelming amount of information. So what didn't really strike me that day, but certainly has in the many years since, and in some ways guide me every day, is while that was better than nothing, it was certainly not the best we could have done to support that child. So from then on, I started thinking about how do we engage all the relevant actors in an individual's life as early and as often as possible. So another quick story, when I went to the State Department of Education, and I mentioned earlier that I had the opportunity monthly to meet with heads of other child-serving agencies across the state. So sitting around a table in a typical meeting, and it dawned on us one day, something dawned on us. It was a seminal moment. And after I say it, you're going to say, what took y'all so long? But, and aside for a minute with all this Pittsburgh stuff, I will say that 4 out of the 16 teams in the Sweet 16 are from the SEC. Oh. Thank you, thank you. One of them, of course, is my state of Kentucky. See the tie? I'm doing, okay, anyway, so now let me go back to what I'm actually talking about. So we're sitting around this table with all these child-serving agencies and individual serving agencies, behavioral health and Department of Justice and VOC Rehab and Medicaid and all the other folks that you would expect. And what dawned on us one day around this table was, wait a minute, we are serving the same people. In large respect, we are serving the same people, and we are so disjointed, we are so disconnected, we are so siloed, and we have admired this problem too long. So let's figure out how to stop admiring the problem and start acting to fix it, which is what we were trying to do. And it was bumpy, bumpy, bumpy along the way, right? But one of the things that we realized is that while the issues we were facing were impacting individuals and families every day across our state, they were not the individuals and families' problems to solve. They were our problems to solve on behalf of children and families in our state.
And had we asked them, they could have probably told us.
Imagine that.
Yeah,
it would have dawned on us
what we discovered
much sooner. But yeah. in some regard, that commitment to meaningful and effective collaboration and figuring out how we work differently and more collaboratively, and I hope there's evidenced in the folks you see and the folks we represent on this stage today. We're modeling that at the federal level, doing our best to model the kind of change at this level that we know it takes at the local level to lead change. And the reason we know anything is because maybe we have a little experience, but it's really because we hear from you about how to get it done at the local level. But that guides me every day.
Awesome. I'm going to go to you, Scott, next, because I want to come back to Molly and ask her what the three big issues are. What were the big things that, or what are the big things that you see are on your agenda?
Yeah, well, I'm going to follow and add to Clarence and Johnny's thoughts. The Secretary reminds us all of the time that those that are closest to the learner, the student, the client in all cases, are the ones that know best. And it's not here in the positions within this city. And coming into the role, I have to admit, I had thoughts of grandeur being selected for this wonderful position, but, I had to remind myself that I was selected because I was a practitioner and because I know what the performance measures and the requirements that I beat my head against when I knew that something better could happen for a young person or a student in our adult ed programs that was wanting to come on a college campus. And so, again, we've got to push that out more locally, and that's why we're really trying. Perkins will not have regulations or non-regulatory guidance coming out on it to allow the widest amount of interaction between the LEAs and the workforce providers in the communities and the employers in the communities. Yeah, and I think that's where we've got to get at the heart of this, that it's the learner-centric. And yeah, much like Johnny, I remember a meeting actually at our Department of Higher Education in Colorado, stood up by a guy by the name of Gully Stanford, who his son John is actually here helping with this conference. But Gully pulled together, and we actually mapped out all of the different funding streams, all of the requirements for each of those funding streams, all of the performance measures. It was a big whiteboard, I promise you. And Clark, you might have been at that meeting, I don't know, potentially. You sat there with me through it. And ultimately, as we looked at that board and said, yes, those are all great measures that the federal government has given us, what's our collective measure of success? And at the end of the day, we walked out of that meeting with 2 to 3 measures that were our measures. And ultimately allowed us to think differently about all of those different funding streams. And I'll be honest with you, that happened locally. That didn't happen in the halls of Congress. It didn't happen at the Department of Labor or the Department of Education. That's the kind of thinking we need over the next 2 years as states are rethinking WIOA and their involvement with their workforce centers, with adult education, with Perkins, with all of those facets to get to the true measure of success. Don't just rest on what Congress is giving you. Rethink it, as Clarence said so aptly, and let's have partnerships that are built on performance measures that you set. I guarantee that you'll hit the other measures in doing that because you're going to be learner-centered.
So Perkins 5 for you really is the embodiment of those relationships you experienced, that trust you experienced at the local level. Okay, now you have the responsibility of carrying this out. Here's the goals.
Absolutely. And, there are great things going on across the country. Great interactions between workforce boards and community colleges. Great interactions between adult education programs and the next steps on college campuses. Great interactions between high schools and colleges and businesses setting up apprenticeships. The real question is, how do we collectively come together to make more of those opportunities available for students? And really focusing in on how do we advance the person's agenda, not our institutions or our systems agendas, is what all of us believe in. When we talk collectively during our principals calls, and we want to make sure that happens locally.
I'm going to come back to that question. Molly, the big 2-3 that you see for ETA in the department.
Yeah, so I'm going to echo what my fellow panelists have said. Lack of statutory flexibility. This idea or this notion that DC should make the decisions. DC should decide what folks in Indiana or Maine or California should be learning, or I'm just going to use a T word, are training on. That should not be up to us. It should be up to community colleges and businesses and workforce boards and everyone to come together and decide what jobs are open there, what do students need to be trained for, what do adults need to be trained for. And so we are doing our best with the limited flexibility that we have to try to allow more of these partnerships to flourish. I mentioned WIOA waivers earlier. To allow more WIOA waivers, our budget talks about 100% flexibility. That has been a big challenge, in addition with grants. So there are, I think everyone knows ETA gives out lots and lots and lots of grants. But there are a lot of statutory requirements on those grants as well. And there are times when we're not able to be as flexible as we'd like to be, or encourage or require the partnerships that we would like to encourage or require. But we're working with Congress. We're passing that information back. As we hear from you and other folks about, lack of flexibility, we're keeping lists. All of the WIOA waivers that we receive that we can't offer, we're keeping all of that information so we can share it with Congress for the next time that they do a WIOA authorization or whatever the next workforce development bills are. So that has been a little bit of a struggle. But coming from Congress, we thought we had to be super prescriptive, and that is just how you think. You don't want to give the administration any flexibility, but it's not the right way. So I've learned.
I want to come back to a point that Scott made and ask the four of you, since this is not the first time you've met each other, so there's a lot of conversation and collaboration. So we are the National Association of Workforce Boards. So Scott, as you relate from your world to the conversations with Molly and back, what do you think is key for the workforce boards in their partnership in reaching out to CTE?
Great question. And having sat on both the state workforce board and then for a short time as an interim college president on the local workforce board, I will tell you what struck me in all of those conversations were the motivations created by our funding streams are very different. And at some points, it actually ended up in contentious conversations between, a business person in our community of northeastern Colorado coming and saying, by golly, I need 3 welders, or I need 2 machinists. Why can't you, Northeastern Junior College, put in a machinist program for 2 students? Well, the motivation from the other side of the college, I'm sitting there going, oh my word, I can't stand up a program for that kind of cost. So keep working at that relationship. Don't give up on that relationship. I will tell you that we're asking our community colleges to be the nimble, because honestly, education was never meant to be nimble. But I will tell you the one place that is probably the most nimble, in my opinion, is our community colleges, especially with their workforce development arms. And many of you have experienced that, of actually going and having them say, yes, absolutely, we'll put that in. But our challenge and what colleges are doing today is setting aside the non-credit, just customized training, but also building into that a way to make it for credit. Because even with that customized training, you don't know what's next for that learner. So how do we build on-ramps in different ways? One of the things that our office just recently had a conversation about was, can Perkins be used on non-credit programs at community colleges? There's a myth out there that it can't. Well, absolutely it can. There's nothing in the law that prohibits that. So absolutely, let's figure out a way to make those programs that ultimately lead to transcripted credit at the end that may or may not be required for the student, but put all of the assets towards building those relationships. But stay with it.
So don't hear no, hear maybe.
Let's keep talking.
Let's keep talking.
Maybe we put in an
Maybe
apprenticeship
not
solution
now.
instead of a full class or a course curriculum.
Cool. Johnny, you represent some very special people. What do you want the boards to understand about working with the kids and the people you represent?
Yeah, sometimes when I start talking, I'll forget what I actually wanted to say, so remind me, you wanted to say something else. Right. So, we talk a lot in my world about high expectations and appropriate support. So specific to your question about the constituency that we serve and our customers. I largely think in education and maybe employment, you all have more experience than me in that, but I largely think that we, kind of the royal we here, have done a good job with one of those or the other. So what I usually talk about is maybe on one side, we've done a really good job at saying we want to have high expectations for all kids. We want all kids to do X. And we say that because we mean it. And hey, it also looks good on a letterhead, right? All kids. But the reality is this. There's only one way for all to mean all. The only way for all to mean all is that it has to mean each. The math simply doesn't work any other way. So on the one side of this intersection I'm going to talk about, we will talk about high expectations, but sometimes we don't extend that conversation to the actual resources and supports that an individual needs to actually achieve those high expectations. So great, it sounds good, great, it looks good on the letterhead, but have we had the right conversations about ensuring that an individual really can achieve those high expectations? Now flip with me to the other side of the intersection. Sometimes we've done a really good job loading people up with supports and perpetuated, even in a well-meaning way, a culture of low expectations for that individual, whether with respect to education or employment. So what I would argue is that neither of those without the other is sufficient. And either of those without the other will continue to make sure 10 years from now we're sitting here and having the same conversation over and over again. So what we need to do is we need to have that conversation at what I call the intersection of high expectations and appropriate supports. We don't need to have either of those conversations without the other. So that's really important to me. Now you were supposed to remind me, I'm supposed to remember something.
No, I think
Yeah. So may I? So in terms of local, I mean, Scott has said it, we've all said it. We do believe and are firmly committed that those who are closest to the individual know better than we do. So we want to support innovation. The reality is, as Molly said, we've got all sorts of things, laws, regulations, dear colleague letters, frequently asked questions. There are lots of ways we've sort of legislated through different things we've written down. And the reality is we're doing our best to make sure we can put you in a position to not be as constrained and have innovation constrained at the local level. So we're working hard on that. So similar to what Scott said, and I'll say it my way, growing up in the mountains of southeast Kentucky, sometimes when you run up against a wall, what I notice is some people just turn and walk a different way. Here's what I'm going to suggest. Try to knock it down first. Try to knock the wall down first. So maybe you called somebody at one of our departments. By the way, did you ever do this? You're changing cable providers. And, right? So you've had that call. You're changing cable providers, and you call one person, and they give you this price. Well, I don't know if you've ever employed this strategy, but I'm going to suggest that you do. Call somebody else.
Wait, is there anybody here from
Oh, I'm
cable?
sorry. I should be much more careful. I got great service wherever I was. And I did the survey and great service. So I should have been more careful.
What a great recovery. No, that was really good.
But the reality is, so if you get an answer from one of our folks, they're doing the best they can. They're answering you, but call somebody else. And if you get the same answer 2 or 3 times, then maybe that's where we ought to be. But my point is, sometimes there is real constraint. There are real constraints. Sometimes those are perceived constraints. Sometimes you think there's no flexibility when the reality is there really might be flexibility. So when you run up against a wall, don't just turn and walk away from it. Try to knock it down first.
Yes. Clarence, what do you want us to understand about this big system as we try to navigate?
A couple of things. I want to build off what Johnny said about all meaning each. Every individual in our society who can work should work. Now, in the sphere that I occupy, many of those individuals and families have some basic challenges to being able to work. Where our partnership needs to be is that we don't expect it to be the role of the employer to be part of some social experimentation. Okay? The role of the employer is to employ. It is our job in the human services sector to build the capacity of those individuals we serve to meet the jobs that are available. And so working to build that relationship, we in the human services system we don't have the kind of understanding of the employment sector that we need to have. That's not our sweet spot. It's your sweet spot. And so building the relationship between where the jobs are and what the demands for them are, and then building the capacity of the people to meet those is where our intersection is. And so building on both Scott and Johnny, if that first answer isn't the answer that gets you there, then we should keep trying until we get the answer that works for us. I think building that relationship between the human services system and the employment system is one that is vital to achieve the objective of attempting to build the capacity of people to be able to ultimately reduce their dependency on public supports.
So Molly, I'm going to ask, as you have started to work with the other departments, what's what's that point, what's that recognition point that you said, oh, okay, here's how we can connect better? Was a part of that discussion?
Yeah, we certainly have those discussions. I'm not sure there was a particular point. I think everyone on the stage has represented, we all overlap, and we need, it's important, it's vital for us to work together. And I think walking into this role, I recognize that, and we are working together on technical assistance and all sorts of other things, but I'm not sure that I had a particular point where I was like, oh, we need to do this. I mean, I think it just intuitively, it makes sense. Whenever the secretary travels and meets with businesses or community colleges, he's always encouraging them to work together, because the community colleges can be teaching X, Y, and Z that, as I said earlier, there are no jobs for that, or that's not what is necessary 5-10 years down the road, especially as we approach more automation and changes in the economy. But anything that we can do to encourage those partnerships is what we're doing. And for example, we're going to soon announce H-1B grants that we had out last year, and in those grants we require that community colleges partner with business and require that business have a match in there, so that business has skin in the game. Community colleges are then hopefully teaching toward what those businesses need. But just as that happens at the local level, I mean, we need to coordinate on the federal level as well to make sure that we're not putting up barriers, or that we are finding flexibilities here and there that we can help share with each other and with you. So
let's talk, I guess, a little bit about signals. This is a city that we all wake up every day and we try to read every headline to like get signals. What would you suggest is the best evidence of the departments collaborating to build a better talent pipeline across the U.S.? Scott, what would you suggest is a signal that you see?
Yeah, and one of them is a notice that's out right now that is still open. It's for the P3 Partnerships Performance Pilots that includes all of our agencies plus additional agencies, and it simply is a waiver ability for any of the grants that we put out to affect better disconnected youth. So waiver from the requirements, from the performance measures. It really allows you to braid funding in a whole new way. And so I would encourage those of you that have not looked at it, look up the P3 waiver request in the federal notice, and it absolutely is a partnership that all of us are a part of.
Wow. Molly, what's a signal that we should maybe pay more attention to of the collaboration?
Soon, or sometime this year, we will come out with a proposed rule on industry-recognized apprenticeship programs, and we want all of the comments and all of the feedback on that to make sure that they work well and that they are successful. But in that, it will require these partnerships that we've been talking about. We're also working with HUD on their Envision centers to help, make sure that they have the right supports there from from ETA as well. So once again, I don't think there's just one particular thing that I can point to, but it's different rules and regulations and just all of us here today that sort of, I think, is a good signal that we are trying to work together as much as possible.
Johnny, anything that strikes you as a good indicator or an indicator of the connections?
Yeah, I think so. Just to build off what Scott and Molly have said already, you should continue to expect, in my view, and hold us accountable for the kind of collaboration that we're promising right now. And we are committed, and we all make a commitment to you from our levels that we're going to continue to figure out how we work meaningfully and effectively together, and that's what our teams are doing as well. What I would say is expect it. Hold us accountable for it. One of the things I worry about is I feel like we're doing a great job across the administration. I think we're doing a great job in our respective agencies to kind of start and get at the systems change, the improvement that needs to happen. But anybody who knows anything about systems change knows it usually takes longer than certain people have in roles that they're in, right? I mean, it's just the reality. So one of the things I worry about is how do we sustain the improvement that we achieve, or do we just kind of start back on the hamster wheel next time and continue to do what I said earlier, right? And alliteration helps me as a mnemonic, so that's why I do it. Admire action, okay? That's the alliteration, admire or action. We continue year after year decade after decade, to come to conferences and meetings across our disciplines, and in some ways have many of the same conversations we had 10 years ago with different people, right? So part of that is just reality, right? It's continuous improvement. You still keep facing stuff you got to deal with, and that doesn't change. That's the positive side of that. The other side of that is maybe we're just admiring the problem, and we're continuing to admire the problem instead of taking the action we need to take to sustain improvement. So I worry a little bit. I think we're doing a great job on improvement. I think many of you are feeling supported by the work that we're doing, and I hope that you are. But what I worry about is how do we sustain that over time? And so I think you should expect that. I think you should demand that of people who are sitting in these chairs today and people who are sitting in these chairs in the future, because we want to support the work that you know best how to lead locally. So I may run out of time, so may I say one more thing?
Absolutely, you may. It's why we invited you all over. Have your say.
I'll make this my last word, okay? So we've said rethink a few times today. We certainly are doing that within OSERS. We are rethinking our work to make sure we're in the best position to serve the folks that we serve across the country, and state education agencies, lead agencies who serve children, and certainly VR agencies, agencies for the blind, all the folks, our special institutions. We're working to make sure that we are in the best position to support them in the work that they're leading, to provide as much flexibility as we can within the constructs of the law to implement their programs, and certainly partnering well with parents and families, individuals with disabilities, and other diverse stakeholders. It's a commitment for us. But when I talk about rethinking, and I notice sometimes some folks get nervous, a little bit nervous about rethinking, because you're going to rethink what? Well, I don't know. What do you need to rethink, right? So don't get nervous about that, and I tell our team don't get nervous about that, because rethinking is really just a commitment to continuous improvement. I believe that healthy organizations from time to time rethink their work. I believe unhealthy organizations don't. That's a strong statement, but here are 2 reasons I believe sometimes unhealthy organizations don't rethink. One, because it's really, really hard, and systems change takes a long time. And you got to dig in and just do it. So one reason is because it's hard. Again, that's the positive reason, right? The negative reason is, if we're being honest, kind of by ourselves, maybe in front of the mirror in the morning or somewhere else in a small meeting, we're just really being honest with ourselves, and partly, maybe part of the reason that we don't rethink is because, frankly, we're pretty content with the status quo. And maybe even more than content with the status quo, maybe we're around folks who are intent on preserving it. And that's a difficult place to be in. So rethinking is a commitment to continuous improvement, to authentic stakeholder engagement, to being willing to confront and address anything that's standing in the way of the success of the individuals that we serve. And my last word, and I promised it would be unless you ask me another question, is this: no individual that we serve should fail to achieve the outcomes they could have achieved just because the people around them could not figure out how to work differently and more collaboratively. It should not happen.
Clarence, what do you want them to know as what you see as this these points of collaboration or examples?
First of all, Johnny, that was a mic drop. That was pretty. I think one of the signals that would ask you to be on the lookout for, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar has challenged us to find creative ways to take advantage of this unusual economic moment. We have a stated unemployment rate between 3.7 and 4%. There are more jobs available than there are people seeking. And so it creates a great opportunity for us to align the resources of the people that we serve with those jobs that are available. But one of the things that the Secretary said to us is that we know that stated unemployment rate doesn't count many people who have dropped out completely. And so what we are building an initiative to do is to re-engage 1 million people who have dropped out of our economy and to re-engage them into our labor force. And so we are, right now, we are reaching out to states to ask us to partner in this amazing opportunity. And so the only way that we'll be able to achieve that objective is a comprehensive collaboration, okay, where we are bringing all of the assets to the same table to achieve this objective. You know, the hallmark of this administration, the objective of this president is to disrupt. Okay? We were all brought in and challenged to challenge what exists. Okay? And so we have a unique opportunity to do so, and we will only achieve that if we link arms in a common objective to strengthen our society by strengthening the people in our society.
So me, I guess we're sort of workforce development sometimes. As an industry, we think of ourselves as maybe the middle child. We're sort of that odd duck. We're not exactly economic development. We're not education as we may think traditionally of education. So it's this notion of recognition. Scott, what would come back to you? What are the kind of things that come back to you from that local level that says, they're hearing, to Johnny's point, don't sit out there and admire the problem, get at the solution. What would be some of the things that come back to you that say, that's being heard, and not only is it being heard, there is a workforce system out there. What helps in that recognition for you?
Yeah, it brings up examples, from the travels over the past 6-8 months. And conversations. And one, had the chance to go to the WSU Tech in Wichita, Kansas.
Yeah, I was just out there for signing day. What a colossal event.
Phenomenal. Center for Aviation Technology, and you've got Spirit Airlines that's connected in with the college president, President Utash. And she, although she wasn't here sitting in the audience to hear Johnny's advice of breaking down the wall, she basically said, okay, we've got to get 1,000 employees trained in a year. And no, our accreditation system won't let us do that in the traditional way. Well, we'll just start weekly classes and make it non-credit, and they've built a system that's working for Spirit Airlines, or Spirit Aerosystems. And then Dr. Casey Sachs, our Deputy Assistant Secretary, shared about Blue Ridge Community and Technical College in West Virginia that has disrupted, and instead of having just 3 terms a year, summer, fall, and spring, actually starts a new term on a much more frequent basis because Procter & Gamble needs them to have consistent output of students. And so there are those institutions and local workforce boards that are tied closely together that are meeting the needs of industry. And I would say that after having sat at a local workforce board meeting with the volunteers, and I know all of you are highly paid for your positions on the local workforce boards. It's usually a donut or a lunch or maybe dinner if you can figure that out. And we haven't said it yet, but I know all of us would absolutely say thank you for that service, because this country, this system, relies on individuals stepping forward.
Wow. Thank you. We feel they're a pretty special crowd out there. I'm gonna ask Molly to take that question last. Johnny, what would come back? What do you want to hear that there's a system out there that is starting to act on the problem? What are the kind of things that build support for you?
Yeah, one of the things that Scott and I love to do, and I'm sure our colleagues here on the stage do, we love to highlight where things are working well. One of the things that we find, and you know that, we're state people, so we know it too. Sometimes people want to hear from us, but usually not. Usually they want to hear from each other, right? So one of the things that's an appropriate role for us, we believe, is to be able to highlight where things are working well, where people have, and people have really figured out, how do we have collective impact around things? How do we work most effectively together? Leveraging resources across programs, right? We've all got different things we implement in our different programs. But figuring out even among those, how do we still kind of maintain the fidelity of implementation of our own program, but how do we leverage across and collaboratively work across everyone, you know, in local job centers or wherever. So those examples are great for us to be able to point to and put a spotlight on, because those highlight sort of, I said was my last point a minute ago, but the last one I'll leave you with now, highlight, we can continue to get better in isolation, right? That's what we were doing in my state. That's what we do sometimes, and we're committed to not doing here. But if we just all got better in our individual agencies, we could pat ourselves on the back for getting better, and we should. That's laudable. But we also should ask ourselves a question, are we just getting better in isolation? Well, if we are, you know, you can rest on those laurels if we want to, but the reality is, at best, that leads to what? Isolated impact. So let's continue to get better, but let's figure out how we get better together and achieve a collective impact that is far beyond the isolated impact that we have achieved. And we'd love to point to stories like that, and we'd love to highlight those as prominently as we can in our roles.
I think I'm hearing, if I'm going to come to you, Johnny, and say, yes, but I better have my partners with me saying, we have gotten to this point, but we need your help to get to this point.
That's right. Thank you.
Clarence, what's going to resonate with you that there is actually a system out there that's cohesive?
I think, building on Johnny's point, what we see out across the national landscape is there are amazing examples of communities who have said, we can't wait for the federal government to deal with its dysfunction. We have complex challenges, and so they've come together and are figuring out innovative ways to address those challenges. And so what I feel like it becomes our obligation to do is to figure out how we can get our rules and processes out of their way. Be able to highlight their innovation, but also to support it by coming together just as we are here. And if a community has designed an intervention, a comprehensive intervention, then it should be our obligation to come together and say, okay, if as what they've designed impacts our different agencies, then what we need to do is figure out how we can help them navigate our rules to help them achieve that impact and that community design.
Molly, when Mel and I come over and sit down with you, what are the things that resonate with you that the system really is a system out there and it's working?
So I would, once again, sort of echo everyone else's points, where hearing stories of individual groups that are making this work at the local level, highlighting. So I think our role here is to highlight all of these great things that are happening at the local level, to highlight all of the partnerships that are occurring. We're trying to collect stories about all of the innovative solutions and ideas that are happening all across the country so that we can, put it together on our website and, like I said earlier, someone in Indiana can see what California is doing and tweak it to work for what they need there. But I think our job, once again, is to figure out if we are somehow in the way, if it's a reg or a statute or an FAQ or whatever the case may be, how do we get around that? How do we find some flexibility there so you can do what you do best because you know the local level is the best, and we should just be here to support you and to highlight what you're doing and working together to make sure that no one of our silos, which we are trying very hard to break down, are standing in your way. We want to make sure that you can do what you do best and that we are there to support you and make sure that everyone knows what you're working on.
I think what a colossal message, and I hope people understand what I get to see, and that is when I come over and we get to sit down, I get to see real people who are committed to doing good work. And so I really want to express my appreciation for Clarence, Johnny, Molly, and Scott for coming over and spending time with us. And I appreciate the collaboration that I get when we come and talk to you guys. Please, a warm round of applause. Scott, thanks. I appreciate it. Molly, thanks. Hey, thanks.
Forgot what it feels like.
All right.
Been in the darkness till you came along. Showed me the daylight. Yeah. And now I'm trying so hard, but I can't shake it. Ooh, no.
Thanks, and I do want to thank you. I hope you understand that we got a mention of the SEC in there, we got the Pac-12 in there, we got the ACC in there. I want to thank all of you for attending. I want to thank the staff and everybody who helps put together the forum. I will see you next year, March 21st through the 24th, here in Washington, D.C. Thank you. Enjoy the technical assistance. Have a great, safe trip home.
You remind me of something. You remind me of something. Something that I used to feel myself. Something that I used to feel.